So here's how we begin a threat and needs analysis. So first we're going to start with a case study, but before we begin, I just want to tell you this is not my threat assessment or needs assessment. This is just a general assessment based upon some common needs that would be found out there in the audience. So our case study here is Joe and Linda Snuffy. They're a family of four, age 36, 35, 10, and 8. She's a police officer, he's a teacher, and they're willing to relocate anywhere here in the United States. In reference to their threat concerns, the first one they talked about was population, followed by tornadoes and hurricanes. Looking at their needs, he really wanted access to water and fertile ground and really wants a decent growing season. So the first concern was population. So here's a map of the current population density of the United States. So if you look at these colors, the white will be your least populated, followed by your yellows, your light greens, eventually your dark greens, all into these different colors, blues. The darker the color it is, the more dense the population is. And I'd like to point out that down here in a lot of these states, you'll see all these little pockets of greens down here, and I'm sure a lot of these would make great places to homestead. And when you do your threat and needs analysis, you may close in on some of these. But for today's sake, what I'm going to do is we're just going to come in here and circle out some of these threat areas. So I probably wouldn't want to be here if population was my concern. Probably not going to want to be down in here because of population concern. And then obviously over here we want to get rid of a bunch of this. And then probably Maine up there is probably okay. So let's take this population density, these lines, and stick it on a map. So as you see, the red here are the lines that we circled before. So Linda has eliminated these areas in her analysis. So now that we've identified the population concerns, let's lay it on top of a terrain map. Because they are concerned about population, we want to add some natural barriers. These barriers will impede the movement of these people. And there's some really neat ones here in the United States. So the first one let's point out here is the Rocky Mountains. So these would be a great barrier to the drift of people heading in this direction. Over here on the East Coast, you've got the Appalachian Mountains. But for today's example, what I'm going to use is the Mississippi River, which kind of runs up in here. So after we eliminate those areas based upon our threat assessment, let's put that on the map. As you can see by the orange areas, Linda has eliminated these areas from her threat analysis, and we really kind of begin to close in, kind of on where we want to be when it's all said and done. But let's keep going. The next concern they had was tornadoes and hurricanes. And so here's a map that kind of breaks down the wind speeds and the hurricanes and those kind of things. And so this area out here on the coast, this is your hurricane threat. Now we've pretty much eliminated most of this based upon our other needs. But this dark red area right here, so this is your main tornado threat. And so if we take this and then stick it on the map, when we add this to the map, you can see that Joe and Linda are closing in on their perfect place to homestead. Now that we've covered their threat concerns, we can move on to their needs. But as you can see, again, this area just keeps getting smaller as we continue to hone in. Let's look at their needs. The biggest thing on their needs list was access to water. And so let's add precipitation of 25, let's try this one right here, of at least 25 inches of rain per year, which that's going to be pretty much this white area, and then everything this way. And then if you look up here, you've got some pockets in here that would be okay from that perspective as well. We're not going to use it because we've already eliminated this area in our threat analysis. So let's stick this on the map. Yep. So now if you look, we're really kind of honing in to a smaller and smaller area. Joe and Linda are already envisioning their new place, and as you can see, the area again gets much, much smaller. So next, the Snuffies final need was a decent growing season. Let's look at the map from a hardiness zone perspective. And if we take and look at let's look at zone 5 and up. So that's really going to be this lighter blue area here. So it's going to be everything south of that line. So let's add that to the map. When you consider all the requirements, the area to look at gets relatively small. And here you could add other things, like school districts or, political positions or whatever else you wanted, so on and so on. But this dark blue eliminated the top, so we are really down to an area about that size. So if we draw it out on the map, I'm going to focus in my search for the homestead kind of down to about this area right here. Okay? So I'm settling in here. The biggest area of opportunity that we had there was that eastern side, or central to eastern Nebraska, a little bit of western Iowa, a little bit up here in north, would that be western Missouri. And so if you take a look at it, we can apply these same principles to this area. So let's try it. So the first thing we've got here is right here you've got the Missouri River, which is again another natural barrier to drift. You've got these population centers of Lincoln, Omaha, even some of these smaller ones, Grand Island and Columbus. And so after discussing this with, hypothetical Linda, this box right here, we eliminated because it's just centered around too many population zones. You've got some other ones up here, Norfolk, not a very big town, maybe 30,000 people. But there's other things you could drop into these too. Down here in the corner, there's a nuclear power plant down here. Right here in Omaha, you also have STRATCOM, which is Strategic Command, which would be a major target. But so you can just keep adding the things that are important to you, kind of as you hone in. So I'm going to focus my attention right here on this northeast corner. So if you look at it from the topographical map, again, you've got your bigger population centers of Fremont and Norfolk, but they're not very big towns. And so from here, Linda and Joe researched other things, again, that were important to them, availability of work or whatever. But for today's example, we've settled in right here on Cumming County. That's probably not exactly right, but Cumming County, Nebraska. So let's talk about how we go about finding land right there in Cumming County, Nebraska. So as you can see, here's the county. Okay, and so right here, going down the center, is the Elkhorn River. And so you can see these pockets of trees, that are in all these other places, which give you some nice natural resources. Also, the river certainly gives you water. So again, you can kind of hone in. And so for today's case, and this is not necessarily how I'd go through the whole thing, but just for time perspective, I'm going to focus on this area right here. I think there's some nice woods, there's some nice trees in there. And so I'm going to hone in even a little closer and figure out what's available and even just what's out there that I can go search on. So many people may not know is there's a thing in counties called a plat map. And this plat map really kind of starts out like this. And in every county is typically divided into townships. So if you look, like here's Windsor Township, here's Bismarck Township, here's Lincoln Township. Right? What I'm going to focus on today, though, is this one right here, just because it's convenient. So this is Cumming Township, just south of the town of West Point. Further into the plat book, you'll look and you'll actually break down this township. So I'm looking in Cumming Township right here. And for example, here this guy owns this one, and this guy owns this one, et cetera, et cetera. So if let's say I wanted to be right here along the Elkhorn River, I may look at, what about this piece of property right there? Once I know the names of who owns the property, then I can research a little further. Let me explain. So here's the Nebraska Assessor's online website. Okay, so this is true for pretty much any county out there, and I can come in here and search by name, right there. I can get the information, I can track down that piece of property. What that'll tell me is what they paid for the property, how long they've owned it, any tax information. Sometimes these properties are on back taxes, and there's some avenues there, but it'll really just give me some information. From there, what I can do, one way to track down the land, is you can just get out and beat the pavement and walk up and talk to people and see if you can find somebody who's willing to sell. Another way you can go about doing it, like this right here, Cumming County, Nebraska Area Exchange, talk, buy, sell, and trade. This is just a Facebook group, so I would join these types of groups in the area, make sure that I had posted out there that I was looking for land, and you might be surprised at what you get back. Obviously, there's another way too, which is what typically people do, which would be in realtors. I found a couple little pieces of property when I was preparing this video that you could look at, but you could go through, all of these in order to track down that perfect piece of land. Now, let's talk a little bit about how we actually found our land and the things that we went through.